Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Well, welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by a chap called Ged Roberts. Ged is a musician, an author. He lives in Tenerife, and he and I met at the Through Principles conference in London last year, and I was really struck by his enthusiasm and curiosity for all the sessions that he and I were in together and listening to, and his desire just to really soak stuff up and learn and see what else was there. And we had some wonderful conversations in the breakout time between the sessions, and I've got to know him over the last year or so, and it's been lovely to see where that goes. He very kindly gave me three of his books, which it's taken me about 8 or 9 months to get around to reading, but I have done, and they've been wonderful. I've really enjoyed them. The thing that caught me certainly at the start of Amazing was the invitation to not just read it but listen to it. And you know, we may talk about that a little bit later, but the listening is so important in life. We tend to forget that, and what really grabbed me was the way you asked us, you know, the reader to slow down and listen to the story. And I realized that that's basically how I read anyway. I'm dyslexic, and I find that I am listening to my voice reading it out. And so it takes me an age to read books because I'm listening to it as if I was reading it to somebody else. I can't go any faster. I'm in awe of people that seem to be able to rattle through books, but actually I quite like the fact that I tend to listen to them rather than read them. So it was a lovely thing that sort of made me giggle. And I just love the playful way that you know that the books run, and the invitation to challenge our thoughts as we go through that. So thank you so much indeed for joining us. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Just to say good morning. Good morning
Cool.
from Tenerife. It's a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you enjoyed the books so far. There's one more out actually. It's only been published a couple of weeks.
Oh, I don't feel too bad then.
But I'll come to that later and plug it.
Cool, please do.
But what you say about the listening and your reading of the book and the way you read it, that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I wish I could include that now in the first book, what Dave Hill said, because he's dyslexic, he therefore reads it more slowly. And I would suggest that when you read a book, you don't miss much, mm-hmm. because you are reading it at a slightly slower pace to what people would regard as normal. What usually happens when people are reading books is that they don't realize they're skipping bits, mm-hmm. because we have this incredible way of reading, don't we, where we can we're almost on the next line while we're on the line before. Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting to get different people's perspectives on reading my book, because this was the Amazing, which is actually called Amazing, A Voyage of Self-Discovery, if you want to find it on Amazon. The reaction I got was quite incredible. Some people just read the back cover and said, wow, you know, you really feel you've got a great impression of yourself. These were friends, of course, you know, having a joke. Other people found that they had to reread the book. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'd sort of say, well, yeah, I enjoyed the book, but I read it again because, and they realized as they were going through it, they'd missed bit. So that was quite interesting. But the actual book itself was never written for any particular purpose. Like it's kind of a self-help book. People have picked it up and gone, this is a kind of a self-help book. And how long have you been into that? And I said, well, actually, I didn't write it to be a self-help book, and I didn't actually write it to be anything other than what came out of my creative mind, having been introduced to the three principles. Mm-hmm. So the book was kind of, it was me, instead of writing songs, I explained it to somebody once, instead of me writing songs, which I've been doing for years and years, I actually wrote songs without a melody and just with the lyrics. Mm-hmm. And they came out as stories. And because lots of my songs have got are stories. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you want to get a message across through a song you've written. And you do it sort of in some sort of poetic way. But this was me just being free to express myself in story form, and had a desire to write a book.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. You know, and I can't actually believe that 3 years down the road, right down the line, or near 4 years, is I'm sitting here chatting to you about, and you say that I'm an author as well as a musician, and I'm interested in mentoring. Mm-hmm. And if you'd have said that to me 4 years ago, I'd have gone, no, you're on a dream there, I'm afraid.
Well, if you could get the dictionary out and go, author, someone that's written a book that's published. Oh, tick. Yeah. that's Jed.
Even the point of publishing a book. I mean, I didn't know that you could publish your own book until a friend of mine, Brian Moorman in Gloucester, had written a book. And I said, wow, how did you do that? And he told me all about KDP, Amazon KDP. You can publish your own book. Oh, really? Wow. And that's where Google comes in handy. You just go onto YouTube and you find all these people who are doing it and explaining how to do it. And then it was like, wow, okay. Yeah, I could do that too. So just having the belief to do it, and then having the gall to do it, and then getting over the obstacles that you provide for yourself when you're doing something new, which comes into the three principles stuff again, There's us all talking about obstacles that we put in our own way because of our thinking and stuff, and we all talk about it and the rest of it. And then I found myself right in the middle of it. You're getting stuck. When I was trying to do something new, and little things came to the rescue. Michael Neal, who is one of my favorite speakers, he came to the rescue through a podcast he did. It was something to do with the new voice. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to be the new voice, because the thing that got me stuck in the first book was I was trying to what's the word I'm looking for? I was trying to give a reason for saying what I was saying by quoting somebody who'd already said it. Mm-hmm. To give it some credibility. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for credibility. And then when I listened to Michael's podcast and all about being the new voice or the new kid on the block or whatever it was called, don't be afraid to be that voice that wants to say something. You don't have to back it up with anybody else. Just say what you want to say. Mm-hmm. And it was like, yeah, right. Of course. Yeah, I don't need anybody else's opinion on it. I'm just going to say what I want to say. So on I went and chugging along with the stories. And then it was trying to put it all together. And I just got stuck. I just couldn't go any further with the book. And then somehow or other, I was chatting with Shaw Rosenblatt, who I'd met at the first conference I went to. And somehow or other, I managed to have a conversation with him on the phone, which is, if you've tried to get in touch with Shaw at any time, it's kind of impossible.
He's a busy boy.
So I was having a chat with him, and he asked me a very simple question. He said, who are you writing the book for? And I said, well, kind of anybody who wants to read it and hopefully people to get something out of it. And he said, well, how about you just write it for yourself? And it was like, okay, fine. And this obviously had to go through the mental process of, what's he trying to say there? And I guess it was to do with the fact that when I finished it and I picked the book up and I read it myself, I go, yeah, I don't care if anybody else reads this or not. This is what I wanted to produce.
Cool.
And I'm really happy with it. And that's exactly what happened. And within a couple of weeks, I'd finished it, published it, edited it, done the lot, and came out with my first book. And then everything else is history, really. And now here I am on a podcast following on from, I've listened to the three already. Hannah Studley was fantastic. Aaron is one of my talking heroes. And Rob, I remember from the conference we met at last year, he introduced the conference and just blew the place apart. I mean, it was
he's a ball of energy.
That was.
He's a ball of energy.
With music to go with it as well. Yeah, it's been a fascinating experience to get into, or to get into the 3P community in some sort of way. I'm not a 3 principles practitioner. I'm not a coach. I don't have clients. I'm still working full time as a musician, but I have a tremendous interest in it, and it's particularly the thinking side of principles. My piece is all about thinking, really, and my latest book is actually called Think Amazing, and it's actually the first book that I'd written without stories.
Okay.
Because I was trying to put a wellness program together, or sort of a well-being program together, and you'll notice I gave you a little handbook, didn't I? It's called the Amazing Wellness Handbook. But the only problem with that is that it relies on you having read the books in order to understand the program. And of course, people haven't got time, a lot of the time, to read the books. It's taken you a few months to get through, and with immense pressure from me.
Arm was twisted up my back all the way from Tenerife.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who good friends who they've got the book and it's still under a garden chair or something, propping something up. And people just haven't got time these days to they don't think they've got time.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And they got rather a lot going on, and reading books. Yeah, I mean, if you're not a reader as well, it's not so easy. I mean, if I go back to my introduction to the 3 principles, it was through a lady called Helen Diaz. Helen used to work for Glaxo, I think. She was like an HR superhero, went on all these courses here, there, and everywhere, and ended up doing therapy. And then she ended up doing NLP and something called the lightning process. And I just went to see her one day, and we're having a chat about helping people, I guess, and what she was up to. I was more interested in what she was up to. And then I just popped the question one day to say, if I was doing this, Helen, which direction would you put me in to sort of to just go a little bit further? Would it be NLP? Would it be lightning process? Would it be hypnotherapy, or whatever else you've gone into? And she said, no. She said, actually, you want to look into this thing called the 3 principles, because it's kind of a new thing that's going around. And she said, I think you'd enjoy that, because you like talking, and you like you're not afraid to be in front of people, and you're a bit of a storyteller when you're on stage anyway. You like to interact with your audiences and stuff. And she said, I think you might like that. So she gave me a couple of books. One of them was Michael Neill's The Inside Out Revolution, and the other one was the Enlightened Gardener, is it called, by Sydney Banks. And I took these books away, and I must have read 2 chapters of Michael Neill's book and gone, oh no, this is getting too deep. I can't get on with this. And the Enlightened Gardener was like, yeah, I kind of knew where it was going all the time, but I quite enjoyed that one. And then so I went back to Helen a few months later, and I'm going, I just can't get on with the books, but I'm not a great reader anyway. I'm more of a listener, being into music and stuff. And so she said, well, I'll tell you what, she said, here's some podcasts you can listen to. So she introduced me to Jamie Smart's podcast called The Thriving Coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, just have a listen to a few of these, because I was going off to Croatia that summer and I had loads of time to wander around during the day with my, attached to an earphone and a podcast. I started listening to his podcast and I was absolutely fascinated by them. And that led me to then look into other people on YouTube and stuff and listen to the likes of Bill Pettit and not Jack Pransky, but the
George Pransky.
No,
George?
Not George Pransky. It was Jack Pransky.
Okay, Jack.
Because he was at the first conference I went to, Jack, and lovely fellow. And I listened to him, and he was on. He does a video with Elsie Spittle, and she was on the first conference as well. So it was all these famous people were at this conference. And it was like, wow. So it was through listening to these podcasts that I actually got my inspirations, I guess, for the stories in the first place. And you mentioned listening before. In the first book, I introduce you. I say welcome. I welcome you as not only as a reader but as a listener, mm-hmm. because it is so important. Listening comes into all of my stories at some point, and there's musical references to a lot of the stories in the second book, particularly. And there's even a story about listening, and being how to be a really good listener, and how people today are not quite so good at it because they have so many distractions that prevent them from actually listening. And how good our great grandparents must have been at listening when all they had was a radio. I mean, there wasn't anything else. I mean, can you imagine? Your ears were glued to the radio. You had to listen, and this made them good listeners. And it's one of the things that's kind of missing from today. But listening forms a huge part of my ideas about thinking as well, because if you're going to start thinking about your thinking, you have to listen to yourself, mm-hmm. and then you have to listen to other people. If you want to understand somebody else and where they're coming from, you really have to listen. And if you don't listen, you'll never understand them. Mm-hmm. And it's giving them that time, isn't it? And that's what I think the principles introduced to me was this notion of the massive link between our listening and our thinking, and therefore what the world that we create around us. That was quite something, really, too.
Yeah, it is, and it's always captivating that there is a direct link between listening and connectivity between people. We all know when someone's listening to us and nodding their head and actually nothing's going in because they're just going through the motions of, right, I'm getting ready to say something, or I'm concentrating on something else, but I want to show you that I'm paying attention to you. Yeah. Versus this person's actually listening. That there's a real feeling of I've got their undivided attention, and they're not trying to come up with something clever to say. They're not trying to come up with a solution to my problem. They're actually listening to me, and that doesn't have to be between people that know each other. That can be between complete strangers.
Absolutely right.
And that's magic. It's magic. We think there's something really important going on there when actually it's just the very natural part of human connection that comes from listening, which creates deeper connection and more curiosity, and from there beautiful creative conversations that you go, wow, I had no idea that we were going to go down that route. And that's what's so wonderful about this, is exploring that. I think there's, from what you've said, there's something that jumps out at me about not being a reader. That was a story I told myself until I was 18 or 19. I hated reading because it was a painful exercise at school. I got laughed at or told off because I'd get it wrong. And at that point, we didn't know I was dyslexic. It was just, Hill, you're thick. Fine, whatever. I'll find something else that I enjoy doing, and I'll just avoid that. And then I went traveling in between leaving school and joining the army. I went off doing a little bit of exploring and took myself to Australia. I'd never been on a plane before, and I thought, well, I've got a 24-hour flight coming up. I better get used to doing long journeys. So I got the bus to go and get my visa, and got bored out of my mind in the hour and a half it took to get to London. Oh, am I going to have to rethink this keeping myself entertained business? I bought myself a book, thinking it was going to last me the 3 months of my journey, and it lasted the 24 hours of the flight. Oh, I need to reevaluate this reading thing, because I thought, this is really painful. I'm only going to do little bits and pieces of it. What I realized was, if I'm interested in the topic, if it's something that I actually want to do rather than something I'm being forced to do that doesn't make any sense to me, then I'll devour it. I'd never really experienced that. And then that sort of shifted my thinking around me and reading. And actually, I've got 3 books on the go at the moment. In the past, I would have thought that was complicated because, well, you need to finish one. You're going to get confused. But actually, we drop in and out of topics all day long. Yes. So why can't we do that with books? So I pick, I've got 3 on the go at the moment, and I pick up the one that feels the most comfortable for me in that moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, lots of people when they say to me, "Oh, I haven't got around to your book yet, Ged. It's on the pile." I think actually you might have said that to me.
That was me.
It's down, in a pile. And then there's one lady who's been who's a really good friend, and she came out with some lovely comments about the first book. And I asked her if she got the second. She said, "Yes, I've got the second one," she said, "but I haven't got round to it yet." She's on moving house. So I really haven't got time for anything in my life apart from work and moving. But I will get round to it. And then she came over to Tenerife, and we met for a coffee. And I said to her, "How are you getting on? Have you opened it yet?" She went, "Actually, no." So I said to her, she said, "I just can't find time to pick it up and open it and start to read it." So my comment to her was, "Do you ever go to the bathroom?" So she looked at me and she knew what I was going to say. And she went, "Okay, fine. Okay. I get it. Yes, there are times when I could just read a paragraph or something." And I said to her, a lot of people think when they pick a book up, you have to read a lot of it, but you don't. And you don't, particularly in my books, I said the stories are so short.
Yeah.
There's nothing for you to get lost in or have to come back to. You can sort of pick it up and go, "Yeah, well, I've read that one and I'm still here. What am I going to do now?" That's one of the attractions of the books, actually, is the fact that the stories are very short, sweet, and kind of to the point. And they're also, I loved the way that you described my first book, because you said the playful way you wrote it. You said it wasn't quite what I expected. And I quite enjoyed the playful way. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really lovely comment, because it wasn't intended to be anything other than something
and that's cool
for you to enjoy. Yeah. And that was really lovely. And nobody else had mentioned that word. And I even looked it up, playful. Wow, I haven't heard that word for a while, Yeah, and it was little things like that brought home to me that actually there was some actual meat in there, the people. And I also tried to explain to some people that because they're just stories, you can go, you can treat them like the swimming pool, if you like. You can go in, you can just have a little paddle, if you like, at the side. Or you can go into the deep end and you can really get stuck into the deep, meaningful part of, of it. And that's kind of nice as well. Can I just tell you a really...
Sure.
A really interesting story about the first book. And when I started to realize there was more to it than I'd wanted at the beginning, or I thought I'd wanted, which was nothing more than just to write a book.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, this same lady who said she didn't have time to read the second book, She works for the Methodist Church as an education and development officer. Mm-hmm. And she got in touch with me one day and she said, would you mind if I used your book as part of our education program? So I said, well, yeah, that's fine. Can you let me know how you're going to use it? So she said, well, there's a story in there called The Talk with No Name. And The Talk with No Name is about a guy who's doing a TED Talk. And just briefly, I'll explain it. It's about a guy who's doing a TED Talk in a university to a bunch of psychology students. But the TED Talk that they come to in one of their little auditoriums in the university has no name. They don't know, because it hasn't got a title. So therefore, the students don't know what they're coming to. Mm-hmm. Neither is the person who's giving the lecture given a name. So all they know is they have to attend because they're first-year students and there is a TED Talk going on, just turn up. So they're all wondering what it's going to be about. Mm-hmm. And so they've got nothing to work on. They've got absolutely nothing other than their curiosity as what it might be about. So when they come into the theatre and they see the guy standing there on the stage, they then have something to work on. Mm-hmm. And they start to judge him before he's even opened his mouth mm-hmm. to say what they're supposed to be listening to. So there's a judging going on, and so he tells them exactly that this is happening. Because you don't know what I'm going to talk about, you're probably already having your opinions about me. And he's he's dressed in a sort of he's got long sort of flowing curly hair, a bit like the guitarist out of Queen, Brian May. So he's got Brian May haircut. He's got John Lennon specs on. He's got a tweed jacket on that you'd expect from a school teacher. A nice crisp white shirt, pair of Levi 501s and a pair of Brogue shoes. So the description's quite, you can almost see this guy. Mm-hmm. So he tells them a little bit about what they might be thinking about him. And then at some point he removes his glasses, he removes the wig he's wearing, and he's a guy who's bald. And he just, so he says, now guys, you're going to have to completely reevaluate mm-hmm. what you were thinking before, because they've got him down as some sort of throwback to the 70s or something. It was this guy. He looks like an old rock musician. And it's so anyway, she wanted to use this particular story, and it's all about us being judgmental. Okay, that was what I was trying to get through in the story. We are a bit like that, aren't we? We see somebody and we go, oh, I don't like them, and we don't even know anything about them. And that's just typically us. But anyway, she wanted to use the story, and I said, well, in what way are you using it? I mean, is it about being judgmental? She said, no. She said, we're having to employ a new minister in one of our churches in Bath. And she said, it's got to go to a committee. So she said, I'm going to use this story in order to get across something called unconscious bias. And I said, wow, I'd never thought about it like that. And she went, well, she said, just to let you know, I've already used it. She said, it really worked. She said, and the reason it worked, and this is what got me, was it wasn't the fact she'd used the story, it's how she said how it had worked. And she said it had worked because no one in that room had felt at all threatened at any time. And I thought that was beautiful, mm-hmm. because they were reading a story about somebody else and some other people. Nobody was pointing a finger at them going, now listen, guys, we know you've all got unconscious bias. Some would go, oh, me, really? I'm sure I haven't. Nobody actually mentioned the words unconscious bias to anyone. They just took the story and they started talking about the story. Mm-hmm. So she said, before they knew it, they were talking about unconscious bias. And so it was very easy to maneuver the meeting in the way that she wanted. I said, wow, that's nice. So that that was me realizing that I'd actually written something which had some sort of substance, if you like, because I didn't feel that when I wrote the book, I didn't actually feel like it was in any way powerful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the power in things comes from how people take it.
Yeah.
So, some people will love it and some people will hate it, and that's okay.
Yes.
That's the nature of humans. And realizing that that's all okay. That there aren't many things that reach and touch everybody. So realizing that by sharing what we believe at the moment with other people comes with a risk that they might not like it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
If it's coming from a place of, curious, open understanding of this is me, this is what I believe at the moment, and it's meant in a genuine, open way rather than a preachy way, then it tends to catch people's attention in a slightly different way. It's no longer a you must know this. It's a okay, I'll consider that. I've not heard that before, and I'll let that settle. Thanks. And I think that's what's really interesting. And I love that story about how the lady used that in a gentle way to broach a subject that could be tricky.
Yes.
And yeah, that's what I find with most of my clients is they have something that they are really attached to that they don't like. Normally, I really don't like this and I want to change it, or I really do like this, but I wish I didn't. That's also something that shows up occasionally. But by looking at human experience in the round, which the principles allows us to do, how human beings experience stuff, we're no longer then looking at them as an individual and the thing that they don't like. We're looking at how experience is created for everyone. Let's start there. And by the way, you don't need to believe me. Don't listen directly to what I'm saying. That's not what we're talking about. It's what feels right for you. So let's explore that. And that then becomes a lot more gentle, and you can be way more playful, even if the thing that they're really stuck on that they've come to you about is, really unpleasant for them, that they've, that's been around for a long time and they really, really want to change. We look at how change happens generally. After a while, they get excited about that, really interested in it, curious about, oh yeah, that's true. I wonder what, and then they start wandering around the edges of what we've discussed. And all of a sudden it starts trickling back into their own idea that they've got stuck on, like me, and I'm not a reader. When actually I am a reader. I just hadn't found the subject matter that I was interested in.
Yes.
And also I was doing it for me rather than for someone to assess my ability.
Yes. And also the one thing you mentioned before, which was very interesting, was the way that you were criticized when you were younger, and how that made you feel, which is huge in everybody. Again, I'm in the first book I mentioned about. I think it's in the sticks and stones story where words can never hurt me, and of course they can. They can absolutely destroy you if you allow them to.
If you allow them to.
When I was at school, and I was told that I had no determination, dedication, or drive. I mean, what have I got then? What have I got? Nothing left. And I say, but of course I did. When I was playing football, I had loads of determination, dedication, and drive. I just didn't have it at school. So what was going wrong there? And then that's when the self-consciousness comes in, doesn't it? And then again, it's the thinking about yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how that triggers everything else. But this same lady who Wendy Allen, her name is, who actually used that story. She also said something really, really quite outstanding about the book. And she said, it's kind of like 21st century parables. So, wow, that's a new one. Can I come back to the listening thing again?
Yeah, sure, please do.
Dave, I know it's very easy to go off on different tracks. There's so many things to talk about. But one of the things that attracted me to the principles, because that's where we met, was to do with listening. And Well, I introduced on my first book, I introduced you as a listener as well as a reader. Well, when I went to the first conference, I remember somebody saying, try not to listen to the words that are spoken. Just try to get the feeling. And I thought, what a load of nonsense that is. I've got to listen to the words, da, da, da. But at the end of the conference, my wife said to me, okay, so what have you what have you learned in your your little holiday you've had? Going away, staying in a hotel and going to this 3-day conference. What have you what's it all about then? And I was absolutely stuck for words. I said, you're not going to believe this, but I don't know what I've just been listening to. All I know is I feel great. And she said, oh, good. That's wonderful. You spent all that money going all that way to do all those, and then going out for meals at night and chatting here and chatting there. And you come back and you don't really know what, you just feel great. And I said, yeah, it's probably like you going to a yoga retreat and me saying, well, what positions did you hold to make? Well, I don't know. I just feel great. But we laughed and she said, but it's great. You feel great. And then a few weeks later, something happened where she said to me, a few weeks ago, you'd have gone on one. You'd have lost your temper. Not that I'm a losing temper type of guy, but I do get a little bit ratty now and again, and a bit sort of, especially with the ones you love, you're always more sort of aggressive and snappy. And she said, yeah, you would have snapped. You would have snapped at that a few weeks ago, and you didn't. So she said, well, maybe that thing you went to actually did you some good. And, I sort of had to think about that, and I thought, you know what? Yeah, I would have. I'm actually a bit more tolerant than I was before. I wonder why. And then I went back to this business of when they said, I think it was Shaw or Aaron at the beginning, try not to listen to the words that are spoken, but try to get the feeling. And I could relate to that through music. Mm-hmm. Because when we listen to music, we don't listen to all the notes that are played. We listen to the thing in its entirety. And maybe the first time we listen to it, we go, oh, yeah, it's all right. Didn't do much for him, but I liked that bit there. I like that bit, especially when the chorus, or if it's a song, I like the chorus. Can't stand the rest of it. Or Brent, when you used to buy albums years ago, or of your favorite artists, you didn't like all the tracks, mm-hmm. and there were tracks that you liked first, and then you went off them, and then you liked another one more, depending on the day or the fact that they grew on you. That was it. Songs and music grows on you. The more it gets, the deeper it goes inside. So I think that's what happened at the first conference. I was listening to music, and eventually some of it started to resonate. Mm-hmm. And the more I heard, the more I liked the type of music, in inverted commas, that I was listening to, the music being the ideas behind, or the feeling behind the principles. Yeah, it was, so I could relate to it. And I still relate to music, a lot of the stuff that people are talking about. And the listening, of course. How often do we actually listen to music, or do we just let it flow over us? Most of the time, it just flows over us. But something of when it's flowing over will make us go, oh, that was nice. Mm-hmm. What was that? I think I'll listen to that again. And that's what happens with the principles, I've found. Even your podcasts with Hannah, and with Aaron and with Rob, I listened to them again because I knew I would have missed something the first time. And when I listened to them again, I got so much more out of them. So if there's anybody listening to your podcast who hasn't listened to them again, I would say just have another listen, because you'll find something in there that actually, when you heard it the first time, it sort of might have just gone, boom, oh, that was interesting. When you hear it again, it'll stand out even more.
Mm-hmm.
In Hannah's talk with you, she came out with the most wonderful thing about, because she'd worked in special effects.
Mm-hmm.
And she then spoke about that. She was saying, I spent my life trying to make out that things that were surreal were actually real. So people believed it. And she said, this is how our minds work. And she said, the beautiful thing she said was, the special effects department in my mind is far superior to anything that we could come out with in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I thought, wow. Why didn't I wait to write my last book and put that bit in? I suddenly said, and then you've got, so things like that. And then, and Aaron talking about stuff coming out of the blue. Well, that's my story completely with 3P. Just the whole thing's come out of the blue. I never intended to, as I said before, to be anything, for it to go any further than just me being a little bit creative, if you like.
But isn't that interesting? Because everything in both of our lives has come out of the blue.
Yes.
We haven't realized that. It's felt like there's been effort involved in some of it, or that there was, someone steering along the way. But actually everything that we've ended up doing has come out of the blue. From you asking your wife out for the first time. That came out of the blue. You didn't, before you met each other, that wasn't even on the radar. And it's fascinating realizing that is how we live life. We think that we've got more control over it than we actually do. And when we feel uncomfortable about it is when we think we haven't got control, when actually this stuff just percolates through us all the time. And if we follow what feels right for us, then we're probably going to be going in the right direction. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how things pan out. Yeah, again, for me to be where I am now, I'm still obviously, as I said before, working as a musician in Tenerife, but I have another desire to do a little bit more for people through what I've learned through the principles, really. Not to be a 3 principles practitioner so much as just to try and help people if they get stuck in certain ways. And I find that when I'm talking to people now about bits and pieces, I find that I can do it so much more easily. And this is what Rob was saying in his chat with you, which really stuck out, was the first time, no, second time, yes. When he said he was just getting better at what he was doing, and I thought, well, I thought you were good at it anyway. I thought you were one of the big guys. I mean, for me to be on the same billing as Rob Cook, Aaron Turner, and Hannah Studley, for me was like, wow, why does Dave Hill want to talk to me? I'm not one of these. I've never been on stage at the conference. Everybody else seems to have been, and I haven't. But I'm on stage every night doing something completely different. And yeah, one of these days I might end up on there just having talking to people about the simplicity of it all, which is the one thing about your take on everything, which I really, really like. Everything that is part of you comes out of this word simplicity. And I remember somebody saying in the first conference, people will not believe you to begin with because they won't realize how simple it all is. It'll be too simple for them to understand. And I didn't understand that at the time, but I do now. Well, there must be more to it. You must have, haven't you got a degree in psychology? I mean, no, actually. I just like talking to people and listening to what they've got to say. Yeah, and so out of the blue, for when I was listening to Aaron, some guy who was a CEO of a company in the UK, who I happened to meet. I was actually doing a live stream during the lockdown. Okay, so we were sort of started to be allowed out a bit more. But we still weren't working in Tenerife, so I was doing a lot of live streaming on Facebook. And I used to offer myself to people, I'll come to your house, because you can only have 6 people, or whatever. If you don't mind me coming to your house, I'll come to your house and we'll do a private little party and we'll put it out on a live stream, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up in Woburn, of all places, and with this guy, Phil Sheridan, and his family. And I didn't know much about Phil at all. And then Phil was on about the book all the time, asking me questions about this, questions about that. We had a game of golf at Woburn, actually, which was out of this world. I was scared on the first tee for hitting a bad one, because I was on such a prestigious course. So, and all the way around, he was asking me about the book. And then he came to Tenerife, and we went out for lunch, and he was asking me about the book. And I said, Phil, what's this about the book? Why are you always, you're obviously interested. And he was the one who said, Ged, you've got to do something with this book. You can't just leave it on the shelf. He said, there's so much in it. You've got to do something with it. So I said, well, what do you suggest I do with it? And he said, you should create some kind of wellness program. And so 18 months down the line, here I am, having tried to do that through my stories, failed miserably because nobody had time to listen to the stories, and then realized, okay, what have I got to do then? Well, what I've got to do is I've got to create a book which tells everybody what I'm trying to say without them having to read stories. It's much more direct. So when you actually get a copy of Think Amazing, it's a lot more direct, and it's all to do with how we think, rather than I'm not sort of suggesting in a story and allowing you to go in shallow end or deep end. I come in and I throw you in the water. I go,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, there's the interesting bit in that will be that for some that'll hit the mark, and for others it won't.
It won't.
And that's the beauty of using a sort of golf analogy. You've got plenty of clubs, so your collection of books allow people to play in with whatever works for them. I think that's a really lovely way to do it, because you never quite know what's going to touch people and how that's going to grab their attention, and whether that's something's been written about the principles, whether it hasn't. There is nothing directly in anything that people are saying that is going to change anything for anybody, because actually it isn't the content of what's being said, it's how it's heard.
Yes.
And the depth at which that's heard. And that can come from anything. It doesn't have to be any of the stuff we're talking about here in any of the books or from any of the people that we're talking about. Yeah. People experience this stuff all day long. Every day. They have been doing it their whole life. They just haven't necessarily realized it. And at some point, something will just click and they go, oh, well, that doesn't make sense anymore. And for the period where it's difficult, painful, unpleasant, it feels like there is no solution to it. And the simplicity comes at the point of which something just shows up out of the blue that goes, how about this? And we go, yeah, that makes sense. And all of that pain and suffering disappears almost in an instant. We might remember it occasionally, but it disappears in an instant because it no longer has relevance to us. It doesn't make sense anymore because there's new things bloomed, and we go, yeah, that makes sense. I'll go follow that for a minute.
Yes.
If we get attached to that, go, well, it was that one thing now that I need to cherish and hang on to, well, we're likely to trip ourselves up again, because at some point that will become stale. Because we aren't allowing ourselves to be creative and see what's around the next corner. And I think that's what's so wonderful about this as an understanding, is it's not about the content. It's not about what people say. It's not about the follow these X number of steps and you'll be golden. It's be curious, be open, see what's there for you, see how that feels for you, and follow the feeling, which we've been doing all our lives.
Yes.
All our lives. And so there's nothing magical in this. It just is a really lovely way of pointing in a direction offering people the opportunity to be curious and see something they may not have seen yet. And I think that's a really wonderful thing, and that's why this podcast is grabbing people from all over the place to have conversations with, because there's absolute gold in there in terms of how people describe what they see when they see it, and that will shine a light for someone else to go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yes, that's the one, isn't it? Your last comment. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's a wonderful one.
That's it. That is it in a nutshell. The simplicity of that. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Boom. Yeah. And that's expansive as a question rather than, oh my goodness, what's in this? Which is, I need to focus on it. Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
And it's all to do with I hadn't thought about that. And also the realization that I'll come back to something that you said to me at the conference when we were chatting outside, and I came over to you and sort of I remember thanking you and the guys for your performance, if you like, if you can call it that. Your what you said when you were on stage, it was very, very moving. And I came over to you and we started having a chat about this, and of course I threw my books at you, trying to find people to read them, not knowing you were dyslexic, but then wouldn't read it for 9 months. And so, but that wasn't it. That it was something you said. You were talking about PTSD, and you said to me, "Do you know the problem with PTSD?" And I said, "No." And you said, "The D." Oh, I never thought about that. And then it was like, you're in a box. You have a disorder, and you went, "No. The PTS is, but the D, I don't like." You said, "I don't like the D because it's not a disorder. It's a natural reaction to PTS, right? To a trauma." Mm. And I really, can I say I liked that comment?
Yeah.
Yes, I did, because it was one that made me go, I'd never thought about that. I'd never thought about it. And then it was all to do with, but of course we do put people in boxes. And then I started looking at all the other Ds. ADD. Well, just means you don't concentrate as much as somebody else. I mean, it's not so much is it a disorder, or is it just maybe you're over distracted? I don't know. It made me think about stuff, all the Ds. And it started making me think about all these Ds. So I'd never thought about that. And putting things in boxes. I remember giving my first book to a lady who was a 3 Principles practitioner, and she really enjoyed the book. She gave me a wonderful critique on Amazon, and I had a chat with her on the phone, and I thanked her for her comments. But she said something really interesting during the conversation, where she said, "You do realize, don't you, it's not a 3 Principles book?" And I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "It was never intended to be a 3 Principles book." But when after the conversation, I had a thought about it, and the thought came into my head was, it doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't have to tick the box of 3 I don't want it to, really. I don't want to be considered as I just want people to read it and get from it what they. It's almost like I'll sing you a song. It's got to be that genre. It's got to be, no, I'll do it the way I want to do it. And if you like the way I do it, then you might want to hear it again.
If it resonates. And that's it. That's it. It all comes back to how it feels for us.
Yeah.
Everything. So
yes.
It's fascinating the traps we can fall into. Anybody can fall into, based on what they believe to be the truth, and that some truth is better than others. Well, all of our realities are separate. They are all different. We are all going to experience things differently. So there is no one right or wrong answer. There's just what feels right for us individually. And as long as we're not hurting people or causing problems in the world with how we show up based on how we feel, then that's an amazing thing. And wouldn't the world be wonderful if less people believed some of the things that are going through their mind?
Yes.
That are driving them in a direction that they think they have no control over, and are potentially leading them into harmful activity or destructive activity.
Yeah, or just as was pointed out by one of our colleagues, the thinking, your thinking, literally, you stand in your own way. This was another way somebody put it, where your thinking actually puts you in front of yourself and stops you from going forward. It just you can't go any further because of yourself. You're standing in your own way. It's almost like you're standing in your own shadow, or your shadow standing in the way. But it's just preventing you from moving forward. And it was quite interesting because this week I used that. I met a guy who's someone in his family was having trouble traveling. They couldn't get on a plane. They got anxious. Mm-hmm. It was an anxiety sort of thing. And I just said to the guy, it's okay to be anxious about stuff. We're all anxious about things from time to time, but it doesn't always last. And anyway, what it really is just the way that she's thinking, the daughter, it's the way she's thinking, which is just getting in her own way and stopping her from, that's all it is. There's nothing wrong with her. It's just the way she's thinking at the moment. Mm-hmm. And he just looked at me and he went, really? And I said, yeah, there's nothing wrong with her, is there? And he goes, no. I said, it's just the way she's thinking, isn't it, at the moment? And he went, yeah, I'll tell her that. I said, you do? You tell her. He goes, wow. So because he thought because of Bangs, she had this sort of way of thinking at the moment that she had to go and see a psychiatrist and she had to this something. And I was thinking, well, actually, a couple of podcasts from Michael Neal put you straight on this one. Have you listened to his Caffeine for the Soul?
I've listened to a few. There's a lot of them.
Those little bites, they're like mini Mars bars you get. You have it's like, wow, that was nice. But it's not the full one. It doesn't do you so much harm. But it's I really like those little sound bites that he comes out with. And Michael also, going back to music and listening and things that have influenced, had a strong influence on me. Sitting in front of Michael Neal and him talking about the space between the notes. Oh, that was a wonderful. I just sat down and, you know what? I'd never thought about that. It's, he's going, it's not the notes. It's not just the notes that make the music, that make the beauty, that make you feel the way you do. He said it's the space between the notes that allows the notes to come at their certain point. Because if they were all jumbled together, it would just be a cacophony of sound. Similarly with a book, with the letters, it's the spaces between. And this was like, the space, creating space, clearing the computer of, what did I say to you last week? Thereafter, they want me to get more storage on my computer because they say it's full. And I'm going, God, I've got stuff in there from 2013 in my inbox. And what the hell do you do with that in there? And I'm going, here's me writing all this stuff about clearing your minds, creating space for better thoughts and all the rest of it. And I can't even clean my own inbox from emails. And I thought, so this is a lesson for me.
Yeah. Oh, Ged, thank you so much. That's been really, really lovely to have a conversation with you today. Just before we wrap up, I just wondered if there's anything particular that you wanted to mention that you're up to in the world that we can leave the listeners with.
I'm so fortunate to have music in my life. Somebody said to me once, we were talking about being rich and famous and all the rest of it. Two things. Somebody said to me once, you know what, you could have made it. And I just said to them, look around you, I have.
Yeah.
for where the gig I've got, the restaurant I am. And then somebody else once said something about, you could have been. I mentioned something about money, somebody having loads of money, and this guy, a guitarist, said to me, he said, "You're richer than the guy who's got the billions." He said, "because you've got music in you." And I went, "Oh, I like that. I really like that." So I'm rich and famous in my own back garden, and I'm really enjoying the road that I've been introduced to through the principles, because it's giving me whatever it takes for you to go. Yeah, it's giving me that, and what's really interesting is where it will lead me.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying not to force the issue.
Yeah, no, that's good. And that's the biggest thing that stuck out for me when we met at the conference last year was I wonder where this is going to go. The openness for, let's go and explore. I have no idea what's out there. Let's go play.
I have no idea what the future holds, other than I know that even though I can just mention things to people on a sort of a very simple basis, when I'm not being a coach, and I'm not being paid for my opinions, and I'm not being paid for my experience or whatever. I'm just saying to somebody, have a think about that. That, to me, to be able to do that and to actually believe what I'm saying to them, and just see a reaction in their face sometimes, or not, is really, really nice. And then my wife reminds me, she says to me, there's no reason why you should want to go down this road and give up your music or anything. She said, because people just love what you do anyway. They're not interested in this. They want to hear you sing, and they want to hear you. So as long as you can keep entertaining, you've got to do that, really. And I'm going, yeah, but what I'm doing is I'm actually introducing my 3P inspirations, if you like, and insights into my music. It's kind of strange. And I remember at the last conference, sitting listening to one of these breakouts with, I think it was Michael Neal, and sitting with, I can't remember who was sitting next to him.
I think it was Michael and Rob, potentially.
It probably was. And I remember saying, I remember asking them, how do I move forward in what I'm trying to do, and Michael said, you stop trying to sell the principles or to explain what they are to people. He said, just be the principles.
Just be you.
Just thought, wow, yes. And then talking, Basia Henderson.
Yeah.
Yeah. She said something lovely, which I really stuck out. And she said, people are always talking about practice what you preach. She said, how about you turn it around? Just preach what you already practice. And I thought, that's what Michael was trying to say. So in many ways, I'm trying to be, just to be.
That's cool.
And by being, who knows where it will go. No, I don't. I can't sort of say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. No, I've got a really busy summer ahead, and I'm going to be doing a talk down in Cambridge to a huge company of HR people about thinking.
Amazing.
I'm really looking forward to that, because I'm not going in with any desire or design to be anything more than the guy who just sits and talks to them and goes, you know what, this is really interesting.
Cool.
And see what they make of it.
Well, good luck with all of that, Ged, and thanks so much indeed.
Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm hoping that we can, that during my travels in the UK in the summer, I do have at least a day aside where I can come and find out where you are, and we can go and share a cup of coffee and continue this conversation, because I like the way you talk. I like what goes on inside your mind, and it is inspirational. So just keep it up, okay?
Thank you so much, Ged. That's really kind of you to say.
Okay.
Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.